Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 244 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk about self-assessment, or sometimes called psychometric tools. And I really like these tools as a way to help people understand more about themselves and about their teammates, but there can be some downfalls to them and they're not perfect. And I'm going to talk about some of these different topics today. So let's get into this episode right now. Now, self-assessment tools are commonly used in the workplace to help people understand more about each other and themselves. And they can be a useful source of information and can prompt self-awareness and an understanding of different styles or personalities within a team. Now, in general, I'm a fan of these tools when used effectively. I think they can be really useful to help people understand their personal iceberg, which can help them lead better. And when I say iceberg, I'm talking about the iceberg model of human behavior. I'll put a link in the show notes page to a post about that. thoughtfulleader.com/244 is where you can find it. But these tools should also be used with caution. They don't tell you everything about yourself or about the people around you. So in this episode, I'll provide a few examples of some common self-assessment tools, what you should do with them and what you shouldn't. Now, there's a couple of tools that I prefer, and first is the print assessment, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes page. And I use this quite a lot with individuals and teams. So print aims to uncover your unconscious motivators, which are a big driver of your behavior. You get a fairly detailed report and some practical ways to use it. Another tool I like is the Clifton Strengths tool, which I'll link to in the show notes page as well, which gives you a detailed report of your top strengths. The idea here is that you maximize the use of your strengths to bring out your best. Now, there are, of course, about a million other tools out there. DISC is very common. There is the old Myers-Briggs type assessment or type indicator tool, and the EQI 2.0 emotional intelligence assessment, among many, many others. But I'll put some links to those in the show notes page. And while I have my favorite tools, all the tools can be helpful to uncover a little about our personal styles, preferences, or motivations. So there are people who dismiss these self-assessment tools as being pseudoscience. That is, the tools claim to be based on science but aren't really rigorously tested in the way that scientific theory should be. And I think this is partly due to the different focus for science and business. Now, the business field is generally aimed at making money, and if tools are considered to be vaguely helpful, even if not perfect, then they are likely to be applied in many workplaces without waiting for the perfect scientific study to prove their effectiveness. Now, my view is that these tools can be helpful for many people, and I've seen a bunch of people have light bulb moments after using them. And this is not because they suddenly discovered something new about themselves necessarily. Instead, it was because some of their challenges and stresses suddenly made sense to them, giving them a greater feeling of self-understanding, leading to greater self-acceptance. Now, if these tools can lead to greater self-understanding, self-acceptance, and the ability to be more conscious of how we operate, then I think they're a good thing. So next, I'll talk about how I think we can use the assessments most effectively. And if you haven't seen it yet, or heard it, I should say, Thoughtful Leader Podcast 203 is a good one. Self-acceptance is a good start for better leadership, or at least feeling better about your leadership. So you can check that one out on the show notes page as well, thoughtfulleader.com/244. And while you're there on the show notes page, you can also apply for a complimentary coaching session with me, where we can start to unpack and work on some of your leadership challenges. If you think that might be helpful for you, please get in touch through that application form. I can't coach everyone, but if you don't apply, we will never know. Okay. So yes, I think self-assessment tools can be useful, but we need to use them the right way. And in my view, it's really the manner in which we use them and explain them that counts. So the first thing I like to make sure is that people know there is no best style or profile. Now, this may sound obvious, but whatever self-assessment tool you use, you need to emphasize that there is no good or bad result. No profile, whatever assessment you do, is better than any other. Now, don't assume that people know this. Be sure to tell them explicitly. However, it could be silly to overlook that some personality profiles or styles will cope with certain situations better than others. For example, some people will have no problem communicating in a direct manner, and others will find it more challenging. Some people will easily understand the emotions of a situation, and others may be more focused on logic and facts. Some people will find it challenging to speak up in front of a group, and others will do it without a second thought. And some people will struggle to be diplomatic and tactful, others will have a natural style that enables this. So there is no best style, but there might be some situations that feel more comfortable for certain types of profiles in whatever assessment you do. The second thing I like to explain is that a self-assessment doesn't define a whole person. Now, with self-assessment tools, I sometimes see situations where people feel like they are being put in a box. But the reality is, no matter what style, strengths, or personality type you are assigned, it's not the whole you. Under the waterline of your personal iceberg, you've got a bunch of different stuff happening. You've got cultural background, physical and mental health, past experiences, sexuality, biases, and genetics, and these are just a few of them. There is no way a person can be fully described by a self-assessment tool, so we shouldn't let the results define us. Now, the third thing I recommend is to use the self-assessment as information, not as a label. Now, I like self-assessment tools because I think they can help people better understand the situations where they are likely to struggle and those where they are more likely to feel comfortable. Being an introvert can be a challenge when you're giving a presentation, but it can be a bonus when you're trying to focus on an important piece of work. The point is, we need to use the results of any assessment as information, not as a label telling us what we can and can't do. Most assessment tools tell me I like to plan and be well prepared, but I can do last-minute stuff when I need to. It's just not how I generally like to operate. So your results don't tell you what you can or can't do. You can choose to do whatever you like. So the key thing to think of here is that you can and should adapt your behavior or style when you need to. When you're using a self-assessment tool, it's important to emphasize the importance of flexibility and adaptability. For example, if we're naturally quiet, it doesn't mean we always need to be this way. We can obviously adapt to the situation. Now, Professor Brian Little refers to deviations of behavior like this as free traits. He says that the expression of behavior that deviates from our normal patterns are used to further various important projects that we are undertaking in our lives. And I'll put a link to Brian Little's presentation as well in the show notes page. So as an example, I'm an introvert, but I deliver lots of training and workshops where I need to speak in front of people all day. So I'm naturally quiet, but I can still do it and I enjoy it. So the warning here is that if you deviate from your natural style or approach for too long, you may feel fatigued or stressed as you are in some ways acting. So the important point here is that we need to pick our battles about when we adapt. And as a related episode, I'd recommend you check out number 153, Why Knowing Yourself Equals Better Leadership. You can check that out on the show notes page as well. Now, another thing to note here is that self-assessment tools are not an excuse. I've come across people that say, for example, I'm a certain style or profile, that's why I come across as rude and direct. Well, there's something wrong with that. It is our responsibility to manage our behavior to work better with others. Being assigned a certain style or personality type is not an excuse for bad behavior or for telling yourself that you can't do something. Self-assessment tools can give us information about how we tend to operate. We need to use this information to help manage our behavior and actions. So it's on us, it's not an excuse. Now, another thing I recommend is to use self-assessment tools with other resources. So in one of the points I've made earlier, we covered that self-assessment tools do not provide a complete picture. They are also the result of a self-assessment, and sometimes we aren't the best person to ask about ourselves, especially if we have some blind spots. We might rate ourselves one way when other people might rate us as just the opposite. So feedback is valuable. Ask other people what their perception is. Get coaching to help you uncover more about how you think and operate. And don't put all your eggs in the self-assessment basket because we may not be as self-aware as we might like to think we are. And there's a related post I'd recommend checking out about blind spots, how to shrink yours to lead better. Check that out, thoughtleader.com/244. And lastly, I'd recommend with these self-assessments, communicate your results to others. Now, these tools can be excellent for raising our own awareness, but they are also useful to help others work with us better. If people can get a sense of your style and how you like to operate, they can cater for it. We can only do so much to create a better work environment, and other people have to come to the party too. And to help them do that, we need to let them know how we roll. It may be daunting to disclose your results, but it can be a valuable way to build trust, openness, and more collaborative working relationships. Now, I highly recommend the use of self-assessment tools to explore your own personal iceberg, but don't expect them to tell you everything about yourself. Use the results as information. Test it. Do they hold true in all situations or just some? Use it as a basis to explore yourself and how you feel in different situations. You can use it to guide you and self-manage your own actions and behaviours. And I'd like to get your thoughts on this topic. Which self-assessment tools do you favour? Do you like them? Do you use them with your team? And have you found them helpful or not? thoughtleader.com/244 is where you can go to leave your feedback. I appreciate it in advance. And if you like this episode or the podcast, I'd encourage you to share it on your social media channels if you use those, because it would really help me to get the word out about this podcast. I appreciate it in advance. And I'd urge you, keep up the thoughtful leadership, and I'll be back next week.